Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Will you please honor our nation's flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Council Madonza.
Here.
Council Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Council Noon.
Here.
Council Elliott.
Here.
Council Kennedy.
Here.
Council Leahy.
Here.
Council Laurie.
Here.
Council Martin.
Here.
That's 9 present.
Thank you. First, we have on the Mayor's Business and Communication for the Mayor's Institute on City Design. Entertain a motion to accept and place on file. So moved by Council Mercia, second by Council Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. We have a citation recognizing Mr. Herman Kabakoff, CFO of Cortron, as a new business in the city. I offer this on behalf of the City Council. Be it hereby known to all that the City of Lowell in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts hereby welcomes Cortron Incorporated to its location at 559 Technology Drive. The city is honored that Cortron, a company that has been in business designing and manufacturing ruggedized, industrialized, and militarized keyboards for the U.S. Armed Forces and space programs since 1969, has chosen to relocate to Lowell. The entire city of Lowell extends its deepest wishes to the owners and the employees of Cortron Incorporated for many more years of continued success, given this day, October 29th, 2013. Congratulations.
Thank you. Can I spend a minute or two or three to thank the City Council, the Mayor, and the entire staff of City Hall for the City of Lowell. We, as the proclamation indicated, we did relocate from Methuen, that's where we were, to Lowell. And when we began that process and decided to do that, I had trepidation, to say the least. It was very smooth, it was very painless, and it was smooth and painless because of the competency of the staff of City Hall and Lowell. In particular, the Economic Development Department, Teresa Park, and all of her staff, and all of the people who we relied upon for advice and permissions and permits. We got our permits. So to all the people who helped us, I can tell you that Lowell was very welcoming, has been welcoming. We came to Lowell with about 45 employees. We now are over 50, and all of the new employees came from the Lowell area. And interestingly enough, what we did is put a little sign up where Drum Hill Road and Technology Drive intersect, and we got rafts of people coming down. And the interesting part is we were looking for some technical expertise, and we got it. We got it. The labor force in Lowell is very, very qualified. And we're very happy to be here. We've grown since we were here in the short 7 months. We expect to have a record year this year. And we really thank Lowell for making it as easy as it has been for us to achieve our goals. Thank you to the mayor, thank you to the city council, and we will hopefully see you all again. Anyone who wishes to come visit us, I extend a hearty welcome. I will personally make sure that you get the 50-cent tour. We have a really interesting industrial product. We make keyboards for the military. And we have our keyboards in every flying aircraft, in the United States of America, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, anything that flies. If you see it in the sky, it's got a Cortron keyboard. We are just finishing our biggest contract ever, where we've put our keyboards in every single FAA control tower in the world. They renovate, I don't know if you're aware of that, they're renovating all the control towers in the world. Our keyboards are the ones that are going to be used in that renovation, or are used in that renovation. And that's just a microcosm of what we do. I won't take any more of your time up. Again, hearty thank you for what you've done for us. We look forward to a very profitable, long, and satisfying stay here at Lowell. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, congratulations. Next, we have a proclamation for Girl Scout Day, which I'll offer on behalf of the City Council. Whereas Juliet Gordon Lowe founded the Girl Scouts of America 101 years ago in Savannah, Georgia, with a clear vision of what she wanted the organization to achieve. And whereas throughout its long and distinguished history, Girl Scouting has inspired millions of girls and women with the highest ideals of character, conduct, and patriotism, helping them gain confidence and character while making their communities a better place. And whereas Girl Scouting takes an active role in increasing girls' awareness of the opportunities available to them today in math, science, health and fitness, technology, and community service, expanding their horizons, now therefore I, Patrick O'Murphy, Mayor of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim October 29th, 2013 as Girl Scout Day in the City of Lowell and encourage all to join in the celebration today. Congratulations. And I also have a few citations to recognize three young women, Raven Markren, Katie Baird, and Marina DiGiovanni of the Girl Scout Troop 60273 for their project placing no littering signs across the city's parks. And we just want to recognize them for their part in what was a really impressive project that earned them Bronze Award, the highest medal achievable for a Girl Scout, for a junior Girl Scout, along with fellow Girl Scouts, again, Katie Baird, Raven Markren, and Marina DiGiovanni. They worked with city officials and conducted fundraising to combat a serious issue in the city, littering in neighborhood parks. And due to their efforts, 6 no littering signs will be placed throughout the city parks. We commend all three of them for their hard work, their sense of civic duty, dedication, and leadership skills, and wish them all the best for continued success. Thank you very much.
It's for you. Don't this way. Turn around. Sorry. Okay, this is Katie. Shake his hand. This is Marina. Shake his hand. Okay. Raven. Thank you, Mary Murphy. Okay. I'd like to say a brief word. I'd like to thank the City Council, and I'd like to thank the Mayor for recognizing our Girl Scouts. 6 years ago, my co-leader, Carrie Lucier, and I decided that we were going to take on a Girl Scout troop. As some of you may know, this requires a lot of work, weekly meetings, and a determination on the part of the girls to make the world a better place. So this was Raven's initial idea. The Bronze Award is the highest award that a junior Girl Scout can get, and she decided she would like to put more signage in the city parks because there was too much litter in the parks. Raven assigned a team. She got a team together with Katie and Marina, and they met for almost 6 months planning this sign and doing the fundraising, and I give them a lot of credit for all the work that they did. They are 10 and 11 years old.
Thank you again. And finally, under the mayor's business, we have communication regarding the letters per the request of Council Laurie. They didn't end up making them in the packet, but we all have copies on the desk.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to accept and place on file. So moved by Council Laurie, seconded by Councilman Donso. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. With the city clerk's portion of the agenda, we have minutes of the city council meeting, October 22nd, Finance Subcommittee, October 22nd, for acceptance. Entertain a motion to accept. So moved by Councilman Donso, seconded by Councilman Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. We have the city manager's communications.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Manager.
If we could take, I'd like to ask if we could take something out of order at this point. Under general petitions, number 20 and 21.
Motion by Council Laurie to suspend the rules, seconded by Council Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. We have petitions, miscellaneous petition. Under general petitions, UMass Lowell request for the traffic pattern changes on Fletcher and Whiting Streets. I'd entertain a motion to refer to a traffic engineer and law department for report and recommendation. So moved by Council Laurie, seconded by Council Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have miscellaneous petition by UMass Lowell to request pedestrian easement and drainage easement at Wilder and Broadway Streets. Entertain a motion to refer to the law department to draft a proper vote. So moved by Council Noon, seconded by Council Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Turning to the regular agenda, we have city manager's portion of the agenda. Mr. Manager?
Mr. Mayor, if we could take out of order in my communications and my portion of the agenda, if we could take Mr. Sean Harmon, who is here tonight to present to the City Council, sort of a follow-up to the discussions we'd had previously regarding the restoration work that will be taking place here in the chamber.
So moved.
Good evening. I guess I'd like to start by thanking the council for your resolution establishing the partnership between the city, the private donors, and the arts community. I think I'm absolutely certain that you're going to be thrilled with the result. The manager was kind enough to basically invite me back to report to you on the progress that I've made on my end of things and the work we're coordinating with the Department of Public Works in terms of getting the work done in a timely and productive fashion. Also, there are some, I suppose, the question about the design plan is pretty much in place and things are moving forward. I can tell you in terms of fundraising, I've gathered $20,700 in pledges, much of which is already in hand. I'm confident that the rest will be coming shortly. I have more inquiries out. The overall budget for the entire, which actually exceeded what my original intentions were, the original budget, there were a few surprises, as one would expect, for the entire renovation, including the upholstery and including the replacement of the hardwood, which cannot be repaired. It really needs to be replaced, but the good news is its replacement is going to be much better than what we have here today. That overall budget is somewhere approaching $33,000. So as things stand, barring any, well, no, there's barring nothing, barring an earthquake, we should be able to cover about 2/3 of that at this point. As those inquiries that I've put out there, massaging and cajoling and begging, come in, then we can do more. Are there any questions?
Mr. Manager?
Harmon, if you could, just to describe, people can see that the pictures have already come down and the work is beginning to begin. If you could just walk the council through the color choices, and I thought we had those, but apparently
We do. Yes,
okay.
I have color boards with me.
Okay.
If you want to spend some time looking them over and taking a straw vote, I don't think you need another resolution for that.
No.
But if you care to take that as well, it's just as well. Essentially, the design plan briefly radiated from the colors that are in the city seal. The city seal is going to be the centerfold, the center point, the focal point of the entire restoration. The two main colors that I focused on in terms of determining the main field of the rest of the carpeting are the pale muted teal that's in the city seal, essentially representing the water and sky, and the yellow that is in the surrounding band that encircles the seal and also has the city's motto, which is, again, art is the handmaid of human good. So the surrounding field is flecked. It's the main color is navy blue, but it's flecked with that teal and with that yellow. The teal that's in the seal, I didn't mean that. That color dictated the color for the draperies. The blockout shades are a soft, warm, professional bit of goods that will be, actually they won't be on rollers, they'll be on a clutch, which should last far longer than what we have here. Now, having established, if you really want to lecture in design principles, having established that pattern, we do have some latitude in terms of wall color. So the manager asked me to come up with 3 options, all of which come out of the historical palette, I might add, because we've always worked very closely with Mr. Stoll at the Lowell Historic Commission, and any things that are in his bailiwick, in his purview, have always been dictated by historically accurate colors. So if you care to see the boards, I can send them around.
Just so the council isn't shocked when they walk in here one Tuesday night and...
I can give you a bit of a précis in terms of what's going on. Originally, when Councilor Leahy asked me to do nothing more than a color consult, it was clear to me because of the honey tones that are in the wood. This is, I believe it's gumwood. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. 1890s would be about the time when gumwood was predominant in the city. My first instinct was to go with a muted blue, which as the design progressed and grew, having established the blue using some of the other things, we have some other alternatives. So what I have is a muted blue that will essentially reflect the rest of the design. It'll reinforce it. It might overpower it. That's your decision. Secondly, I've got a soft cream, very warm. It won't struggle against. It won't reinforce the overall design concept, but it won't fight against it. And it's very neutral. Finally, I've got a warm gray tone, which sort of splits the difference between those two other options. It's also very neutral, so there'll be some latitude. I think any of these colors will serve to enhance the other effects that we're bringing into the chamber. Are there any questions?
Any discussion? Entertain then a motion to accept as a report of progress. So moved by Councilman Johnson, second by Councilor Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Thank you.
Right,
Thank you. Shall I leave these with you? Or?
Anyone else returning to manager's communications? Councilor Mercia.
Mr. Mayor, I do know that there was a study one time long ago when they talked about the color blue and the calming effect that it has. I'm not saying anything about what it should be, but this room here with the color blue and a calming effect seems to hit the nail right on the head, but...
Anyone else under manager's communications? Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there was a report about police overtime in the packet, I think in response to a motion by Councilor Kennedy, which I think merits discussion. I would suggest that matter be referred to the next monthly meeting of the Public Safety Subcommittee, which would be, I think, 2 weeks from tonight.
Motion by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. We do have a registered speaker on that item. Mr. Clerk.
Eric Gitchia.
Good evening, Mayor Murphy, Manager Lynch, and members of the council. My name is Eric Gitcher. I live at 34 Livingston Ave in Lowell. I am concerned with the safety in our city. After reading this report, I'm even more concerned there is no long-term solution to our public safety problem. I remember Lowell in the 90s like it was yesterday. We had many of the same problems that we have today. How do we correct those problems? We did it with community policing. From 1994 to 1999, Lowell was the fastest city in the United States to cut crime by 50% with a residency of 100,000 plus. It's no secret how we made those strides in crime. We did it with community policing and a staff of around 260 police officers. And it's no secret that the police chief at the time was recruited to run the Boston Police Department because of the strides Lowell made in community policing. He made many of those same strides when he became the chief of police in Boston to cut down crime and shootings. In fiscal year 2008, Lowell Police had 259 officers. Today we have 232. That's including 11 in the academy today. We have reduced the police department by 27 officers in 6 years. Not one sergeant, lieutenant, captain have been reduced. These reductions in staff were our everyday patrol officers, the police officers that walked our neighborhoods and deterred crime from happening. We pride ourselves on being a college town. Currently, the University of Massachusetts has had to send out 4 email notices to students alerting them of violent incidents in our neighborhoods. In a statement made in today's Sun, a spokesman for the university said, "The safety of our students, faculty, and staff is our #1 priority." Does it not open our eyes when a spokesman from the university states their #1 concern is safety and doesn't state education is #1? If we are going to grow our community, we need long-term solutions to public safety. The #1 concern at this time in our community is public safety. Every day we wake up to another serious crime happening in our neighborhoods and read about it in the newspaper and on TV. If we want to grow our economy and we are serious about becoming a destination city, we need to put our patrol officers on the ground back in our neighborhoods. Neighborhood police officers build bonds between residents and the police force where they share information with each other. We trust our neighborhood police officers. Most of us no longer know our neighborhood police officers. We don't share information in most cases, and we don't feel safe. In some neighborhoods, there are big signs telling us to lock our doors. This is not how I want visitors to be greeted to Lowell, or how I want to live. This memo on overtime versus adding officers is a short-term solution to a long-term problem. There will always be a need for overtime. We understand that. But this does not solve the problem. It is a reactive approach based on statistics that have already happened. There are many examples of community policing I could point to and show the results, such as Boston, Camden, New Jersey. But why? When we can look no further than right here, Lowell, Massachusetts. We set the bar for community policing in the 90s. At the same time, the economy boomed and people felt safe. We need our neighborhood police officers back so our economy can grow. Students will continue to choose our state-of-the-art colleges, and most of all, our residents can enjoy the quality of life we've come to expect. Thank you, Mayor Murphy, Manager Lynch, and members of the council for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this very important subject. Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
I know some of the other councils, I've already heard they wanted to speak on this. Just one correction to Mr. Gitchia's comments. In 2008, we had 238 police officers, according to the report that the police superintendent recently gave me. You may be working out of the budget book, which has a number of positions that are vacant but still listed at $1. That was the way budgeting was done at the time. But I'll double check that, Derek. Thank you.
Council Mercia and then Council Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did get a report of the issues of public safety in Lowell, and it was hiring new police officers versus overtime. And I'm not an authority on this. I'm not in the police department. I only go by what professionals dealing with this all the time have to say. And I know that we'll be hiring 11 new police officers soon out of the academy, and I welcome that. I'm not saying I don't welcome new police officers, but we did get a report from people that know this. So this isn't coming from me, because I don't know, but I would assume that having overtime is very crucial. And this is what the report says, that when we talk about so-called trouble hours, and we're talking about from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning, when we're dealing with that shift, sometimes, you know, there's not overtime there, and you can't work the police officer into the next shift. But in short, it says, in short, for the same amount of funding that it takes to cover only 1/3 of the hours in which data shows a large portion of criminal activity occurs with one newly hired officer, the city could cover 100% of those trouble hours with 2 police officers using overtime. So to me, that says it all. Now, that's what I'm understanding, and that's what I believe to be true. So I think I read that because that statement, to me, is right on target. And for the record, it's not on the agenda, but it's very important to know that there's a gun buyback this Saturday at the DPW office from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that's another effort to get guns off the street. Thank you.
Council Leahy and then Council Noon.
Thank you. Couple things in the packet. I just had a comment about the report on the lights and the washing the globes. I just noticed, I just had a question, if you could get us the answer through you to the manager. You know, why are we using different globes all over the place? There's 3 different styles, 2 different bulbs. So if, you know, if you want to answer it now, you can.
Mr. Marchand may have some
Sure.
information. We can add to that if needed.
Right, we can expand on it, but basically, some of the lights were put in at different times, and so some of the specs were somewhat different. Certainly, it helps to have consistent and standard fixtures, globes, and lights throughout the downtown, and that has caused a few concerns, but they're working to address those, and again, they come about as projects that are done at different times, and so new equipment is spec'd out on that. But we'll get some more information and find out on it, which projects were original, which ones have been added, and which ones have been changed in terms of the specs for those.
Okay. And then I just, with my verbal request, I had asked that the old crosswalk going to be blacked out soon enough over at the auditorium.
Right. We're working on getting that done. Right.
Okay. The other one about there's a answer to the motion I had about the zoning ordinance that requires posting signs. I got the report from Mr. Backey, but my point was that the sign over on Stedman Street was up for I don't know how many weeks. And when I asked about it, it was told to me that it was considered okay. And then next thing I know, they put a new sign up. So that was my question, is why was this sign up for 3 weeks when it was told to me it was acceptable and then it wasn't accepted? So that's the stuff I want to see being eliminated, because it wasn't right the first time. And then the third thing, I did want to talk about the public safety issue, the report that we got. I missed the first part. Did Councilor Martin, are we going to send this to subcommittee then? Okay.
Great.
Because I too, you know, we're concerned. Monday, we had an incident that was in the news. And I can see, as Councilor Mercier pointed out, the relationship between hiring and overtime. But, and I can see in my neighborhood and throughout the city, I can see the extra walk-in patrol and I see the cars. But as we've said before, what people see and what they perceive is considered the truth. So, I'm just wondering when we're gonna have some sort of a more visible campaign to make people feel, to have the perception out there that if overtime is the idea right now in the short term, we need to have that presented and rolled out in full force, so people feel that they're seeing more policemen out there, more cars, more people walking around. Monday I woke up and I was surprised to see that in the news. So do we not have, we used to maybe have press conferences, do we not have that anymore? Coming out and just saying, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we accept, it's not acceptable anymore. We're not, I know we don't tolerate it, but
Right.
to wake up and see that on Channel 25 News, I would almost like to know if we could get a text or an email saying, be prepared, this is going to be on the news, because the council should know that. And second of all, I was thinking about this tonight, and then someone brought it up to my attention. Maybe Commissioner Davis, when he was here, we had more press conferences and showing everybody that we're being proactive on this. So those are some thoughts, but I think we really need to be out in full force. And if overtime is the solution for right now, then people need to see, more people out there and more patrols. I've been downtown myself, I see the cars driving around, but I would like to see more people walking around. Thank you.
Mr. Manager.
Well, if I could just respond to the council's points, and I think there are some good points there. As you know, generally, I do text the councilors, email the councilors whenever there's a major incident. I apologize, I didn't text you on that one. That was certainly a major, every incident's a major incident in our minds. But we didn't get one out on that, but we'll try to improve that. In terms of additional press conferences, we can have press conferences. That really, I'm not sure what that really does other than, sort of reinforce, but it does certainly reinforce the message that we don't tolerate this, but hopefully people are aware of that. Overtime really isn't, the point of this memo isn't to say that overtime is a solution, but it's also not to say it's a short term. It's a strategy. It's the popular, and it's still certainly a popular approach, but popular approach in the 90s was really a return to the notion of getting police back in touch with the community. That had been lost somewhat over a period of decades as more police got into cruisers as opposed to being out on walking beats, which was the norm, back in the much earlier in the 20th century. It was a very popular approach, and it still is very popular approach of really making the police more than just a force that goes out and arrests people. It actually is a force that works with people on problem solving. That is still the case. But there's also a whole new movement that we've talked about here in the council chamber, and perhaps some people that haven't been in the council chamber aren't aware of this movement, towards the notion of smart policing. And it's really the allocation of resources in a way to be flexible and strategic, much the way the U.S. military has gone through a completely different way of doing business with a changed environment. Deputy Ryan is one of the leaders in this area nationwide and has spoken on this, and other members of the department have participated in this as well. And Lowell is really is one of the communities at the forefront of this movement nationwide. Overtime is not, I don't want anyone to think that I've taken a position, or that the police department has taken a position that overtime is the ultimate solution. It's just a strategy. We are continuing to staff the police department with additional bodies, or with bodies, as the report does point out, and it's with regard to staffing, that in fact, since 2009, when 225 of the positions in the city were taxpayer funded. We're now up to 232. What we've experienced is what's taking place really across the country. And, you know, if you want to go back to the 1990s, back during the Bill Clinton presidency with the COPS program, we did have 260 police officers for a year, I believe it was, during that period of time, based on the information that I've been given, that we did peak out, and we did quite well. And but those federal dollars, those state dollars, have really dried up. In fact, recently we were denied, or no, we weren't approved for a grant by the state because they had a limited amount of money and they wanted to dedicate it to communities that frankly had a bigger crime problem in the city of Lowell. And that's not to say that we don't have a problem. Clearly we do have issues, and we've had a spike that we have to get hold of here, and we're working hard to do that. We are bringing the 11 new recruits on. The 11 recruits are the highest level of class going into the academy that we've had in the city of Lowell since I approved 11 people going into the academy in 2008. And if you want to see the next year in which we put a similar type of recruit class in, you'd actually have to go back into the 1990s. And actually, I had someone from the police department tell me yesterday it was even earlier that we had that. But I think it was probably back in the 90s. So we have been putting bodies out there. I'd like to be able to probably add additional people. We do have the 11. I've authorized the superintendent to take on 4 or 5 new lateral transfers from other departments this year, so we can get up to the number we want to be at. We don't want to hold back on that. We're dedicated to having those people out there and on the street, and on the when I say on the street, on foot. I think Mr. Mills is covering the meeting tonight for the Lowell Sun. I think it was Mr. Mills' article, a very good article written about the fact that in some of the neighborhoods they're seeing an increased presence out in the Lower Highlands area in particular, but also over in Centerville. We've got more officers out on foot, and these 11, when they come on later this month, will be put out there in that similar or deployed in a similar way. We did recently receive a grant from the state of about $367,000 that will fund some civilian support, which will then free up uniformed officers to get out of the station and out on the street, and also provided again with that national concept of smart policing, targeted overtime to get out into some of our high crime areas, or I should say problem areas. So I agree with everything really that has been said, but I think we need to sort of clearly outline what has been done and what we are doing, and if it needs more coverage and more announcements of that sort, we're happy to do that.
If I could just finish up, that's what we do need. I mean, when we have an incident like over the weekend and people ask me, what am I doing? I don't really have clear answers to give them. And I think that the council should have, while we're moving forward on this, we should have a weekly or a monthly report so we know what's going on, so we can tell people that there are more patrols out, there's more people working. When Superintendent LaValle was here, he had mentioned that you might take 10 people out of the academy, but then you have 12 or 13 people retire.
Right.
So I had suggested, why aren't we overbooking? How much is that going to cost us if we carry 3 extra people until someone retires? Maybe that washes out at the end of the year, but these are things I think we should know what's happening, and are we overbooking, you know?
Right. Well, in reality, Council, that's exactly why we have 11 going in this year, is because the pattern over the last number of years, particularly during the times of fiscal uncertainty, was that we wouldn't actually send out, we'd only put in 5 or 6, and this year, back in the spring, Superintendent Friedel and I were discussing this, and we discussed that notion of people retiring, and we wanted to make sure we were filling that properly. So I authorized at that time 12 people going into the academy. Now only 11 went, but those will fill in not only the people that were retired at the time, but additional personnel that have retired since. But in addition to that, as I say, we've added, we're looking to add 4 to 5. To get those 11, and by the way, I think this is significant as well, to get those 11 people into the academy, we had to go through a very extensive civil service process. We actually exhausted the list that civil service gave us of about 100 people to get 11 qualified people that we could send in. So it's not an easy process, and you don't necessarily want to just take anyone that applies. You want to make sure you get the best, and we got the 11 best of that 100, and we'd be really pushing the city in the wrong direction if we were to do something different.
Thank you.
Council Noon, then Council Elliott.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe that every councilor and candidate running for city council certainly want more police. And the police department themselves too want more police. The question is how we're going to pay for it. Are we going to, close down the small department, and just, spending money on adding more police officers? Are we ready to burden the taxpayers on this? So there's a lot of question on how to pay for it. If you look at in the past, the manager alluded to a little bit that in 2009, 22 officers, sworn officers, came out of grant, state and federal grant. And we lose out on that. If you look 2014, 0 grant. So the number of that you're looking at right now for the taxpayer to pay in 2009 is 225 police officers, as opposed to now has increased to 232. Taxpayer have to pay for it. I think, the best way to do is, Councilor Mercier alluded to in her comment, that is, none of us sitting here, we may be working in public safety, some of us, but not day to day in terms of the front line in addressing this issue. The expertise lies with the police department, the superintendent, acting superintendent, and her people who has the expertise. They said the best way to do is to use smart policing, to really use whatever money that we have, that they have at their disposal. Use that in the best way to deploy officers to the right location where it's needed. That said, I too would want to see more police officers. And you're right. The past week or two, you've seen more officers walking beat the street in the Highland as well as others that you mentioned. So I think the police department have done the best with what they can or with what they have. The best way for us to do going forward, that is, to fund them when they ask for it, so that they can plan ahead. Not react to when shooting happen. And that's what the best way for us to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Elliott, then Council Lowry, and Council Kennedy.
I think he was before me.
Oh,
I think Council Kennedy was before me.
I'm
That's fine.
calling on the people that raised their hands in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a couple of questions, Mr. Manager, on this, on the memo. You indicate that you are looking at new funding to add additional police officers. Are you planning on bringing in a tax increase if you hire more officers to fund that, or are you funding it within the existing levy?
We would be funding that within the existing budget or transferring money within. We would not be looking to increase the levy this year, no.
Okay, so that's good to know, but
No promises for next year, though.
well, the election will be over. I did read through the report, and let me state, I understand the premise behind overtime. We've always had overtime. It's always been a challenge to cap overtime throughout the years, and it's not just Lowell alone. It typically is, an internal control issue, but it's just very difficult. But I do firmly believe that with, the spike in crime, but I think it's not just recently. It's been over a long period of time, and people are concerned, and all of us have been crisscrossing the city, and the paramount issue is crime. I do firmly believe while we need to have some overtime, I don't believe it is the long-term solution. Smart policing is the new strategy, but sometimes you just have to go back to the same basic premise of what does work. Community policing, more police officers in the street, and it's a matter of priorities. We've hired one police officer, and I think that's catching up to us now. I think that's why there is so much crime. I mean, I understand. It's a matter of priorities. We have hired, there's been hires of, community planners, recycling enforcement, victim witness advocates. There's a clerk in your office, Mr. Manager. There's an MIS person. So there's been plenty of people hired. We need to make it a priority and put police officers back on the street. And, a $320 million budget, we can and we should be managing more officers on the street. I mean, ask any police officer. There's a correlation between more officers and less crime. Does that mean we can't use smart policing techniques? No, not at all whatsoever. Target those areas, but more officers is a preventative way to get a hold of this, this increase that is affecting the city, I think, in so many ways. So we just got the overtime report tonight, so I will probably plan on bringing up next week, because it was just on our desk tonight showing where the money is being spent. But again, I don't believe there's any substitute for putting more officers in the neighborhood. We hear it from our neighborhood leaders. We hear it from residents, and it seems, weekly we get, or sometimes daily, we get emails on what's happening in a particular neighborhood, breaking and enterings, and it's not, let me just say, it's not just between these, these peak hours that this stuff is, that activity is taking place. It's happening in the middle of the day as well. So I think generally speaking, there's a general increase for more police officers, and we need to make that a priority in addition to some overtime. We spent $947,000 in overtime last year. To me, that is not solving the problem. I understand it takes time to get officers in, but the plan to put more officers into the pipeline and to increase our complement of sworn officers needs to be done. And I do hear, and I understand reserves are a good thing, but when we see what's taking place in the city, maybe we should be using some of that money, Mr. Manager, because it's not doing us any good in the bank when people are not safe in their homes, safe in the streets, and, safe in the city. So, I guess this motion is going to the Public Safety Subcommittee, but, moving forward, it'd be good to have a better or a more specific plan on how many officers we are planning, what is our target officer, increase in officers in addition to the grants, in addition to these new officers. What is going to be our target number for this year to increase officers? Thank you.
Council Lowell and then Council Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I saw the report from the police, and I had said this at the debate. When it comes to police, I listen to what the police have to say. We could hire 10 new officers tomorrow. When you listen to the police, the people running the police force, we could hire 10, 12 new officers tomorrow. First of all, it's going to take 6 or 7 months to get them through the academy. The other issue is, when do they work, what 8-hour shifts? So in essence, you hire 10 officers, you have them working. Considering days off, you probably have 6 or 7 working throughout the day and not at the peak times. I'm not opposed to hiring new officers. I know we're getting 11. I've seen a change recently. I was over in the Highlands the other day. I saw a police officer walking through Highland Square. I see the officers working in the park. One thing I found, a couple of weeks ago, I had some calls over in the back Central Street area, and we actually had a meeting at Centennial Island. Captain Sullivan came. I hope when the next police chief comes, we always had officers with the LHA, maybe a coordinator with the elderly. We have a lot of sites across the city where a lot of the elderly live, not public housing, but private housing, and somehow have a coordinator with the police department. We were over to the Bishop Markham, myself and Councilor Mercier a couple of weeks ago, and I think these meetings go a long way. But in essence, with that report, I look forward to the subcommittee meeting with the police department. Former Superintendent LaValle spoke of the overtime, the essence, and now the acting. So I look forward to that. One other issue we did have in the packet I'd like to bring up is the auditorium concession contract. The Lowell Sun just did an article probably within the past week of the bookings going on, and I guess we're booking quite a bit of events. Can we talk a little bit about the contract, who got it, and what we can look forward to?
Mr. Bakey's been handling that for me, so I'm going to ask Mr. Bakey, because he's...
It was a local company that got it,
was a local company, yes.
and I was very happy to see that.
Yeah, pleased to, I guess, announce to the council this evening that the selection of the Julian Lindsay Hospitality Group as the concessionaire for the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. It's a partnership that's been forged between two local companies, actually. Lindsay's, which everyone knows is a very successful catering company in the area, and RTJ Concessions, which is a concessionaire who is based in the immediate greater Lowell area as well, and does concession work for a number of venues similar to the auditorium, and then a number of venues that are a little bit different than the auditorium throughout New England, actually. Their most local contract is a subcontract to Aramark to do some food concessions at the Songus Arena. We thought the selection committee, which included a couple members of the Board of Trustees at the LMA, as well as Tom Moses and myself representing the city, reviewed three proposals, and really all three were very strong firms and had a lot of positive attributes. But this the combination of the shared experience that these two firms brought together, both in handling the alcohol sales, the concessionaire will hold the alcohol license for the facility, and concessions at similar venues, combined with the fact that they were actually offering the most advantageous financial proposal to the auditorium, made this really stand out among strong proposals for the concession. We're looking forward to working with them, assuming we can get through the contracting. We expect that they'll be working in the auditorium for events in November.
Thank you, Mr. Bakey. That is good news. It's good to see the local companies come in. So I was just happy to read that, and I want to thank the manager for that report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back to the police report, if we can. Mr. Manager, it's good to get the report. I guess what I think is, just in very simple terms, for $200 of overtime, you can get 300 hours of straight time. And that's why it seemed to make sense to me to have more officers on. But I realize, and from reading the report, that it's not quite all that simple. The report does cite that there are 624 problem hours. I think that maybe we have more problem hours than what we think. And I understand that we don't have the money to do community policing like we did back during when the Clinton administration was in place. But that doesn't mean that community policing is not a good idea. I think it was a good idea. And it doesn't mean that we have to switch off from community policing to smart policing.
That's right.
Maybe the answer for us lies with a hybrid that includes both. That would include more police presence, more officers down. I in the past couple of weeks, have been up in the Highlands, and I've talked to a couple of people that were very happy to have a police presence up in Couple Square. And I guess up there, it's not really a crime problem, but a speeding problem that goes on up there. Anyways, I think, I understand that this is going to the subcommittee. I think that maybe the subcommittee should stay on top of this over the long term. But what I would like to see is maybe a hybrid that includes smart policing and as much community policing as we can possibly afford, which would mean then more cops on the street. You mentioned in your remarks earlier that the civil service list was exhausted. Is that?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, so what does that mean? Does that mean that we need to be, that there has to be a test given or something
Well,
like that,
there's a test given every year, so we asked for a certain, we said how many people we wanted to fill. We literally went through that entire list in order to find 12 good people that we could put in the academy.
Okay.
So if we'd asked for more, we would have received more names.
Yeah.
But obviously, the lower down you go, the harder it is to find good people.
Okay.
We got the 12 best out of that 100.
You know, I don't know if they do this in the police department, but it seems to me that for people that are getting ready to retire, thinking of retiring in the next year or two, if the police chief were to ask them when they were going to retire, we'd be able to anticipate when they were going to leave, maybe, and then not be surprised. So I would think that anybody would be, you know, people that are getting ready to retire, I think, you know, they make those plans and decisions, and they know probably several months ahead. Maybe they don't share it with everybody, but they usually know several months in advance when they plan on retiring. And so maybe a little more communication in the police department would mean that there wouldn't be any surprises, and we know when there were vacancies, and then we could plan that way and try to minimize the amount of vacancies that we have. And then just finally, I spoke to you earlier today about the sign on Andover Street, which I think was a bad idea. First of all, because of the message there, kind of meant that as soon as you come over the city limits, you gotta lock your car and just be careful. And I don't think that that was the intent of the sign, but there really wasn't enough for it to say. But that's maybe not a thoughtful way nor does it cover everybody. So there would be a lot of people who maybe never go on Andover Street and never gonna see the sign, and they're not gonna necessarily lock their doors. But you know, when we spoke about robocalls, and I don't know what the price of that is, the cost, but that seems like it would cover everybody. And it's a lot more, it's just a more discreet way of handling the problem than to put a big sign like that out on Andover Street.
Mr. Manager.
Several points, Council, that I just want to respond to. I didn't, and if I misspoke, community policing is a tremendous strategy. And as everyone knows, I'm going through the process of selecting a new superintendent now and spending quite a bit of time talking to a number of candidates from within the department and outside. And one of the key questions that I put to them is the notion of community policing and what their experience is. And it is a tremendous tool to make a police department effective. Lowell has been at the forefront of community policing. We remain committed to community policing and remain, and so we will continue to do that. It really is a hybrid approach. Again, the targeting of times and locations, you use that concept of smart policing as a more productive way of than simply just building up the force. Having said that, you need feet on the street. You need foot patrols. You need police officers that are assigned to neighborhoods and become known to those neighborhood people, and the neighborhood becomes known to them. And that type of relationship building and problem solving is a key part of that. So that's why we are doing more. We certainly work with the neighborhood groups, and that's been a big part of it. But we have to continue and really staff up more or beef up more the foot patrols. There's no doubt about that, and that's what's underway now with the way the interim superintendent has approached this. And so that's point number one. Point number two was with regards to the communication in the department. We do know we don't know for certain. There are people who hold the cards close to the vest, and they don't necessarily want to say because they haven't really made a final decision themselves regarding retirement. But we often know who's scheduled to go and who's about to go, and we know that ahead of time, and that is what governs or guides us as we go through the recruitment process. This year, we were more aggressive in actually filling those. There will probably be some overlap that positions that would otherwise be vacated, we will have people there, and they'll be retiring sooner, or soon after. There'll be people retiring soon after, but there'll already be people out of the academy. The third is on the robocalls. I agree that when I heard about the sign, I think the idea was a good one. The execution didn't meet my, I think there could have been a better way to do it. We did leaflet the neighborhood as well. So that's an approach we were using as opposed to the signage. The robocalls, the system that we currently have in place with Code Red, it does get expensive if you're going to do that on a regular basis. It costs several $1,000s, I believe, to do a neighborhood. And if you do that every single time, it really starts to add up under the contract we've been operating under, which is really geared more for true emergencies, evacuation orders and the like. But having said that, we have been looking at several other products that do robocalls and do messaging services, text message, emails, that whatever people want is their means of getting information. And Mr. Marchand has been coordinating from my office, working with police and fire. We had actually a system ready to go last year that was going to do that and would have been available for something like this for very easily, an alert system. But unfortunately, the company that we were interested in working with was debarred from the state bid list, so we had to pull back on that. We've since we went back out, we looked at 2 other companies, and in fact, it was later today after you and I spoke that I got the final report from Mr. Marchand, and we are moving forward to go with the Code Red service for alerts citywide, depending upon what people want to sign up for. Phone, text, emails. I'll know not to text you, but but we will be utilizing that for all types of alerts, parking bans, no school announcements, and it can be used for a multitude of services. But your point is well taken, that that's a better way of doing it.
I mean, we do it for the schools, and I think that you do a couple of things with that. First of all, the message can be a lot more comprehensive than just a sign on the street. You also get the neighborhood involved.
Right.
And you don't have to do it every day or every week, but people can expect that for several weeks that there's a problem like this, and then on the lookout for it. And I think that there might be a lot of times when we're saving money.
Right.
Because there's less incidents than there would be without the robocall. So that ends up, making the robocall be a smart idea, I think.
No, I agree. The difference with schools, the reason schools have been ahead of the rest of municipal organizations is because they have separate systems that are funded through the E-rate program, that is money that's paid through the different I believe it's the telephone companies, that's paid over for educational purposes. So schools use different use those monies for different purposes. Sometimes it's computer equipment, sometimes it's alert systems. There's a variety of things they're using that money for that they're entitled to, but the remainder of the city organization is not entitled to. So that's why they're so far ahead of us in that area.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, before I yield the floor, if I could, I'd just like to go to item G under the city manager, which is having to do with the Butler School project. And I think Councilor Noon also had a previous motion on regarding the same thing. And there's a response from the city manager indicating that everything's on track and so forth. But the reason that I made the verbal motion last week is because I went by there and I didn't see any activity. So it really seems like nothing has happened. So do we know, for everything to be on track, do we know do we have a completion date or on that, or
Mr. Bakey?
Well, as I believe was stated in the memo, they are in the process of going through the permitting process, and they obviously can't start construction until they have a building permit. They can't get a building permit until they have all their approvals from the planning and zoning boards. And initially, they went through, and I think we've included the decision letter from the planning board. They have gone through the site plan review process and obtained site plan approval. But as part of the site plan that they presented, which was some of the mandates of the tenants that they're talking to about the buildings, they needed to place the buildings on the site in such a way that some variances are required. So they are now in the process of seeking the variances from the zoning board that would allow them to place the buildings where the tenants want them. They obviously can't start construction until they have those permits in hand, but presumably they will be before the zoning board shortly, and the zoning board will view that favorably, and they will be able to start construction soon thereafter.
Well, you know, maybe I'm misjudging the time that's lapsed, but it seems to me that several months have gone by. Wasn't that, I mean, when we approved the project, I would have thought they'd be almost ready to go. And it seems like it's just taken a long time. And I think everybody's aware that there were other issues involved that people thought might jeopardize the completion of the project altogether. Mm-hmm. So I guess one of two things that I'm interested in is, one is that not the case? Is the project not being jeopardized and we're all expecting it to come forward? Yeah. And secondly, when should they break ground on that? I mean, how long have they got left for the permitting project?
Well, they again, as I said, it's really at this point, it's going to be in the hands of the zoning board to determine whether or not to grant the variances, and obviously whether they do and when they do will dictate the timing of when they're able to pull their building permit and then break ground. And it really, they have been, in my opinion, they have actually been moving fairly quickly through the permitting process since they have identified potential tenants. And I think one of the things that happens is, again, I think you well know, when you have real estate development projects, you may conceive of them a certain way and generally be proceeding along those lines, but then while you're marketing the property, and then when you actually secure tenants, the tenants will have specific requirements. Sometimes those requirements cause changes to what you had previously had in mind, and this is definitely an example of that, where the specific requirements of the two tenants that they are, the two major tenants that they're working with, did cause them to need to change some of the things about what they previously were proposing. The things they're changing are not the important things that were critical to the city committee making a recommendation to the council, and the council ultimately approving this proposal. Those core components remain, but they are significant enough that it caused them to need to wait until those were clear before they could go through the process of site plan approval, which again they now have done, and now they're in the process of going through and seeking a necessary variance for the project. Really, none of that has anything to do with the issue that has been brought up about the legal, completely unrelated legal matter that one of the principals in the company is affected by. And they have consistently reassured us, and we have communicated that back to the council, that that issue is not a significant factor in this project one way or the other at this point.
Do you have a estimation on when the permitting process will be completed?
Well, again, I can't say even whether the zoning board will grant these variances, but let's assume they do.
In a different way. And if everything goes well,
okay,
right down the line, then when do you anticipate that
Well, I would think if they're going to be before the zoning board in the coming weeks, I would think if everything went fabulously and there was no reason to continue the hearing and the zoning board approved it, I could see them being able to then subsequently pull a building permit very soon again thereafter and start construction probably in the next couple of months.
Before the end of the year?
Potential. I mean, that's conceivable. Again, it's also equally conceivable that the process may take a little longer than that, but that does seem not inconceivable. But they have tenants in place, did you say? They have 2 anchor tenants that I'm not sure exactly what the status of whether they've signed letters of intent or have actually signed leases, but they have been proceeding through the permitting process now based on the specific requirements of those 2 anchor tenants. So I presume that indicates that they're in a pretty serious relationship to move ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Councilor Mercia and then Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Adam Bakey, so stay right there. I was pleased, very pleased to see that a local caterer got the bid for the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. Of course, he had the highest amount of money, percentage money to go back to the city, which is good. But one of our concerns at the time that the caterer was going to be chosen was the fact that there are a lot of caterers. So my question is, let's say this organization's having a fundraiser, could they then in turn choose their own particular caterer or go after another caterer to do that, or is it strictly to the person that got the bid?
No, it is an open shop with respect to catering.
Right.
What this RFP and contract award is for is the concession at the auditorium.
Concession.
So they will be the entity that will hold, only one entity can hold the liquor license
Right.
at the facility, and they will be the entity that holds the liquor license. That role was performed previously by an affiliate of Mill City Management. They will also be the entity that will operate the concession stands and provide food and beverage concessions during events at the LMA. But the RFP specifically stated, and they agreed to in their response to the RFP, that the facility will be open for catering by either, obviously they are not precluded from acting as a caterer as well for events, but entities are, people who are using the facility are allowed to bring in external caterers as well. And the financial terms will be the same for the external caterers as they are for if someone happens to use this firm as a caterer. That is different from their role, again, as the concessionaire. And just as was the case with the previous arrangement, because only one entity can hold the liquor license, the open catering does not include the liquor or alcoholic beverage service. That has to be done by the entity that holds the license. And that was the case all along at the auditorium.
But we didn't know that it was going to be the same this time, and that was our request, that everyone has a fair shot at being the designated caterer for whatever organization is there and chooses somebody else. So that is a good thing. I knew that answer. You never ask a question unless you know the answer, so I wanted you to say that again, so that's a good thing. Thank you, Adam. But I'm getting back to what we're talking about, which is all the pieces of the puzzle. 11 more police officers, that's a piece of the puzzle. Overtime, that's another strategy. I think a strategy also is we need tremendous help, and I think word of mouth goes a long way. And I'm saying this for example, word of mouth to me is the best form of advertising. I want to go to that restaurant. Have you been there? Oh, word of mouth. Yeah, so-and-so said it's a great place, so word of mouth. I think we need to have a campaign which backs this up, in that you don't want to have a gun in Lowell, you're going to go to jail. We have a mandatory year jail sentence for using a gun, and yet nobody's afraid of that. There's no word of mouth that says, well, you better not have a gun, you're going to jail for a year. We can make it 5 years, but there's no fear there. We need to help the police by creating some sort of laws that stick, that people know that, ooh, I'm not going in that section there. I'm not going into Lowell. Lowell's, gee, we could get away with it. We can't anymore. We need to have word of mouth that any person that's coming in here to cause trouble, or even that lives here that wants to cause trouble, that wants to have a gun, we ought to have a campaign and we need the legislators to say maybe it should be 5 years. I don't know if it has to be a statewide law petition, but we need some help in other areas besides the police. They need help as well, and so that's why I'm saying this, because People aren't afraid. Years ago, the guys would walk down the street, they'd have a comb in their pocket, back pocket, and they'd comb their hair. Today, they got a gun in their back pocket. It's like it's nothing. I don't want to have this society so used to it that it doesn't matter. We'll walk over that body on the street. That's what it's coming to. And I don't want to scare people, but I don't want to be so insensitive to such a tragic happening in the city when your little boy is sleeping in bed and a bullet is ricocheted because someone fires it off. We got to have a big consequence for that. We have to have some sort of message that this isn't tolerated in this city. That's my message here.
Yes, Manager.
Counselor, I think that you hit a couple nails on the head there. One is that in terms of the gun laws, and I think the council has urged the legislature to take up some changes in the gun laws in the past, and I think that that's worthy of doing again. I think the gun laws need to be toughened up even more for here in the city, and we do need. The other is, and I'm glad you mentioned the gun buyback program that's this weekend. But I think the other part of it is that we need people's help. People have to be participating, and that goes to the core of our public safety campaign that we actually are working on and hope to roll out very soon. And I'll give a sort of a preview of it right now, and that is that if you see something, say something. We need people's help. We need people's help to let us know when things are gone wrong, whether it's crime, which is the topic that we have before us tonight, but it's really a number of other issues that we have here in the city. If people see something that, if they see trash on the side of the road, rather than just let it linger there, contact us, say something, so that we can go out and take care of it. If you see code violations in a building, say something to us so that we can deal with it. If you see some issues that you think are affecting the way the city is operating, let us know. Potholes, say something to us, because we depend upon the people. The city obviously belongs to the people, but they have to have a vested interest in helping us solve the problems. And the public safety is the clearest example of that. We need people to cooperate in the process. Particularly if a crime is committed, we need people to step forward and assist us. This is an issue that I know I've spoken to a number of police officials here in the city as well as outside the city. I know this is an issue that Commissioner Davis has had down in Boston, that crimes are committed, but no one comes forward to help solve them, and we need that. We need that type of assistance. So I think your point is well taken.
Perhaps we need more cameras, because the camera's not afraid to tell the truth.
That's correct.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. I just had a couple more questions. So, Mr. Manager, in this report, since 2009, we're down 15 officers. Is that correct? I just want to make sure.
Since 2009, we had 247 offices. Right, that was we didn't have. This was a request, I believe, that Superintendent Friedel had received for fiscal year 09. I think fiscal year 09 was actually up from fiscal year 8, according to the numbers I had here. But from 9 to 14, it's down 15, and you can see that that's really all grant-funded positions that have gone away.
And how many and we're down civilian positions?
We're down civilian staff as well, yes.
Okay. I also had a question for the auditor, Mr. Mayor. The last year-to-date budget report we got, Madam Auditor, was, and this is on overtime, there's a total allocation of $947,140. And the report, I just noticed tonight, the report you gave, it's $1,176,722. How are we able? How can that happen that we exceeded the appropriation by $250,000?
Because as you, front page, it's from all sources. It's from grants. It's from state grants, federal grants, everything, not just the general fund.
Okay.
STEP program, you asked for a complete list of all overtime. for
Correct.
13, so it wasn't dependent upon the funding source.
Right, okay, well, that's just good to know. And lastly, Mr. Manager, Council Mercia mentioned something tonight, and I think it's a good thing, but none of us here seem to know that there's a gun buyback program this Saturday. Was something sent out? Is something going to be sent out, or?
Counselor?
I heard it on the radio.
Right. We've got some, we do have word out there. I thought there was something in your packets, actually, but we do have word out there that people, alerting people to it.
Okay. Look, again, I think it's a good thing, because I was one that suggested it, but if people don't know that it's going to take place, then, where it's going to take place, are you sending out any information to?
There has been information
medias?
sent out. It's to the media. It's at the DPW Saturday from 10 to noon or 2. And
10 to 2, I thought it was.
I thought it was 10 to 2, yes. So we will, but that is out there.
Is it possible to send out some information, how it works? People can, they come down, they
Sure.
are going to get money for guns.
We'll,
Can we send something out? Because if people don't know about it, it's not going to, they can't participate or let others know who may want to participate. So
absolutely.
I don't know if the local newspaper can perhaps.
It's actually 10 to
something?
2, you're right,
It's
10 to 2. 10 a.m. to 2.
And it's, it's confidential. People can come down to, they don't. How does it work? Why don't we just let me know right now? Let the people at home know.
They come down to the DPW. They turn in their guns, and I can't recall, and I apologize for this, that I don't have that information in front
They
of me.
get $50 for
A rifle,
a rifle and
$100 for
$100 for a gun.
Right.
handgun.
So, but we'll get more information out on it.
Okay.
I apologize. I don't have the paperwork in front of me. So,
Okay. Well, I think it's, considering we have so many gun problems in the city, it would be a good thing to get as much publicity on this and try to get, even if it's one gun less on the street, confiscated. That would be good. Thank you.
Council Noon and then Council Leahy.
Thank you, Mayor. In response to your motion with regard to the wayfinding signage toward the Cambodian town, respond from DPD Director Adam Becky, it appeared to indicated that on the first signage that it's not going to be any space or any room for the Cambodian town sign, and then next to it is the exit 38, which saying that 3 mile too far per policy of the MassDOT signage policy. And then we look at the back of it, it appeared to be a space in place of Revolver Museum. So my question is, what is the process in getting that spot to put the Cambodian town's, wayfinding signage toward that spot?
Mr. Becky.
Thank you, Councilor. I believe the memo also discusses how the space that had been occupied by the revolving museum on the highway signage was already in the process of being converted to Western Avenue Studios, and that is in that process. They actually had gotten that request in before this motion was made, and they're working on it. The wheels of MassDOT work extremely slowly, but that is already in process. Unfortunately, we also received an update today that is obviously too late to get into the packet, but the city's transportation engineer heard back from MassDOT. He had asked them to be creative and see if there were any ways they could accommodate Cambodia Town, even though that particular sign panel was full. And the MassDOT's response today was that they, as a policy, do not do wayfinding signage on their highways for areas of cities and towns. and that they do not meet their definition of an attraction that they can provide the signage for. So we will continue to pursue that a little bit more with them and see if there's anything we can do about it. But as of right now, MassDOT has determined that, in their opinion, Cambodia Town is not something that meets their standards for something they can provide wayfinding signage to. We're not satisfied with that answer, and we are going to continue to see if we can get a better one from them. But at the moment, that's what we've heard. Now, obviously, the good news, which is also in there, is that we have identified some funding, and we are going to try to address some of the local wayfinding signage that we can install that isn't dependent on MassDOT, so that we can at least help orient people toward Cambodia Town.
So that funding would really do signage to when it's come off the connector. It's not on the connector then, the wayfinding signage.
Right, the ones that we control are after you have left the connector. The ones on the connector are the ones that MassDOT controls.
With regard to MassDOT, what can we do to address this issue with the MassDOT in saying that this is one of those requests that does not meet the policy of MassDOT? Can the city or the state delegation do something about this?
Yeah, we just got that email today, so we're going to continue to work with them. I have to say, this isn't the first time that MassDOT has said no to something the first time, and then subsequent requests have perhaps occasionally changed their response. So hopefully we may have some opportunity to further work with them. But I can't say what exactly that will be yet, and exactly how they'll react to that yet, because again, this is new news today. Unfortunate news, but new news today.
The funding that we received, what's the timeline in terms of the local signage to be installed?
I don't actually have a specific timeline on that, but I do know that we will. I do have a couple of my staff people are working on that, and we are working on it now, and hopefully we'll be able to work with the sign shop to get it installed fairly quickly. But I can't give you a specific time right now.
Would you kindly update the council on that happened?
Absolutely.
The process, as well as the communication an ongoing communication that you will be having with MassDOT?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council Leahy.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that, do you think we're using the website efficiently? Like, is the gun buyback on that? I'm trying to check.
We were actually just looking. It's been on the police website. It's in the police blog. It's been on my city manager's blog. It's been a press release was issued to WCA, obviously all the media. WCAP. My understanding is the Lowell Sun is planning to run it later this week, and it's been put on the city's Facebook page. There was a Twitter post on this, so we're utilizing all the social media, and then in terms of traditional media, we're using WCAP, the Lowell Sun.
Okay, because, I guess I check the city website, I don't check the Facebook or anything like that, but, and then just, you had mentioned the safety campaign.
Right, the public safety campaign, right.
Who's doing that,
That's a joint effort of the police department, DPD, the DPW, and it's being coordinated out of my office.
All right, I can't emphasize, we'd like to know about that.
It's not done yet.
Well, I know, but
so it would
it'd
have
be
been
nice to just know what's going on, because, it's just, this thing Monday morning, when I woke up and saw that on the news.
Yeah.
It's, obviously, it's disturbing to all of us, but, if we have a press conference for Winterfest, we should add a press conference for this is what we're doing, or something's happening. We're very proactive on this. We all realize that it's an issue, but for that mother, this isn't a good enough answer for her tonight. And I'm sorry that we can't give her a better answer. But
well, I don't know what answer there is, what answer you were expecting us to give tonight.
Well,
I don't know if giving her an answer that we were holding a press conference is necessarily the best way to go. I think the answer is that the police are on it. We weren't actually, when the gunshot was fired, I don't believe we weren't actually called until the next day. We didn't get a call that night. We didn't get a call for number of hours. But the police are working on it, as well as they're working on all of the cases that are out there. So,
It's been a tough month.
right.
Shootings, cars getting broken into, tires being stolen. You know,
Right.
it's a tough month, and for us, I feel that I don't know what's going on, so, thank you.
Any further discussion under manager's communications? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file. So moved by Council Mercia, second by Council Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Being after 7 o'clock, we'll move to the public hearing. Utility public hearing scheduled for 7 p.m. National Grid, 2 pole locations at Industrial Ave East and Gorham Street at the corner of Boston Road. Open it up at this time for those wishing to speak in favor.
Hi, Michelle Stacy, I'm a representative for National Grid. You have a couple of things on here I saw for us. One is for a stub pole on Boston Road. We have another one for a pole to be placed on Industrial Drive. And I didn't know, you have something on the agenda that I didn't have. I think it was conduit. I was just looking through here and I saw
I
it.
have 2 pole locations at Industrial Ave East and 1 at Gorham Street, Boston.
Boston Road is Gorham Street, is that the same street?
I'm assuming it's at the corner of Boston Road and Gorham Street.
And then underground electric to 2 locations at 585 Merrimack Street. Was I supposed to have information on that? I didn't have it.
No.
No, that's further down the agenda.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
for a public hearing a week from now.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's those 3 locations.
yes.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition, seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Entertain a motion to refer to the water inspector for report and recommendation. So moved by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have an ordinance to amend the zoning C&F Realty Trust to extend the TTF district to include 122 and 130 Andrews Street and 180 Moore Street. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Reading by title in City Council ordinance. An ordinance amending the code of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled Zoning by extending existing traditional neighborhood 2-family district zoning district to include the entirety of 122 and 130 Andrews Street and 180 Moore Street in Lowell, which is presently zoned traditional neighborhood single family. Entertain a motion to refer to a public hearing for December 3rd at 7 p.m. So moved by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted.
Excuse me,
Councilor Leahy.
could someone give us an explanation on what this is?
I can, but before I do that, I actually believe the council should also refer this to the planning board for a report and recommendation as part of this motion as well. This is a private petition from the owner of the former Sacred Heart School, seeking to have that property rezoned from single-family to 2-family.
All right, with the intent of,
Presumably in conjunction with a plan, they have to redevelop the property, but at this point, they're proposing the rezoning.
so it has nothing to do with the church and the rectories across the street, it's just the.
Yeah, this area in question is the Sacred Heart School properties and the parking lots that were associated with them. The Archdiocese has sold that property to a private developer who is now petitioning the council for what he believes to be more favorable zoning.
All right, and would we see his plan before we change the zoning?
That's certainly something you can ask him. Typically, again, zoning is not specific to a particular project. Zoning is the land use regulations that anybody who wishes to do anything with that particular piece of property is subject to. So zoning is really about sort of setting the range of possibilities that the council wishes to see on a particular piece of property. It isn't so much about, do we like this project or not? But in cases like this where it's brought in by a private party, it's a perfectly reasonable question to ask them what their intentions are and what they can say about it, and evaluate that as well as thinking about the other things that might be possible with the zoning that they're proposing.
All right. So is that part of the request when it comes back to us, or we don't get that information?
Well, again, this is a private petition, so the proper person to ask that of is the petitioner.
Okay.
And they would, presumably,
Just
they will
seems funny
attend
when
these
we change
hearings.
the zoning and then we don't even know what we're allowing in there.
Well, we can certainly speak to you if you have specific questions about what the new zoning, the proposed zoning or the existing zoning allows. That is definitely something we can discuss in general terms. But that isn't the same as the specific project this particular developer is interested in. And presumably, if the council wishes to act consistent with what this petitioner has requested at the end of the zoning process and adopts the new zoning, that would merely open the door to allow the petitioner to seek whatever permits they would need to actually do whatever project they want to do, and that would presumably have its own permitting process in addition to the zoning change process.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you. I appreciate Mr. Bakey's guidance. This does go to the planning board for report and recommendation.
Right.
Right? And did we set a hearing date?
That's it, December
December
3rd
3rd.
Okay, all right.
at 7 p.m.
Okay,
No, I
so
didn't-
at that point, we'll have the report and recommendation from the planning board, and I expect the proponent would be here at the hearing as well, right? I mean, typically, that's what happens.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, and speaking with the zoning administrator, the public hearing for the planning board would be November 18th.
Okay. And here, 12/3.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would entertain then a motion to refer also to the planning board for report and recommendation. So moved by Council Martin, second by Council Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have an ordinance to amend Chapter 222 to create Section 222-15 for panhandling. Motion to waive the full reading by Council Mercia, second by Council Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Reading by title in City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 222, entitled Peace and Good Order, by adding subsection 222.15, entitled Panhandling in the Downtown Lowell Historic District. And entertain a motion to refer to a public hearing. So moved. To November 12, 2013, at 7 p.m. So moved by Council Kennedy, second by Council Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have an ordinance to amend Chapter 260 for trees. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Laurie, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 260 thereof entitled Trees. And this would be a motion to refer to a public hearing on November 19th, 2013 at 7 p.m. So moved by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have a vote to transfer $35,000 to the cemetery. Motion to waive the full reading by Council Laurie, seconded by Council Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council vote, order to transfer $35,000 in the cemetery division accounts to provide repair and service to monuments, remove hazardous trees and related costs, etc. in the Edson and West Lawn cemeteries. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move for approval by Council Elliott, seconded by Council Kennedy. Roll call, please.
Council Madonza.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Council Noon.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Next, we have a vote to transfer $14,800 to the Elections Department. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilman Johnson, seconded by Council Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council vote, order to transfer $14,800 to cover November elections for the Election Department. What's the wish of the council? Move approval. Move to approve by Council Kennedy, seconded by Council Elliott. Roll call, please. Councilman Mendonça.
Yeah. This particular transfer is all within the Elections Department through the mayor to the manager. So it's just moving money from salary account to non-salary account, correct? Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counsel Madonza.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have a communication from the city manager requests approval of out-of-state travel, one for the library. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move for approved by Counsel Kennedy, second by Counsel
Mayor.
Mercia. Counsel Kennedy.
Could I just ask a question of the manager on these out-of-state travel? They all come and many of the march is paid for by grants and so forth. Over the summer, the police chief went to Africa. Did that come before us? I don't remember that one.
No, it did not,
Okay, why didn't it?
because that was not paid for with city funds at all. It was done on her time. It was not as a city official.
So it was not grant money or anything?
It wasn't grant money, it wasn't city money, it was her own money and her own time.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Counsel Madonza.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Noon.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Next, we have subcommittee reports. Report of the Economic Development Subcommittee of October 29, 2013. Counsel Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Economic Development Subcommittee met this evening and to get a report. I had filed a motion subsequent to the annual meeting of the Lowell Plan where the Planning and Development Department and the manager made a presentation about economic development activity in the city. And there was I thought, an impressive enough report that it bared repeating here. Not every member of the council or every member of the public was able to see that report. So Mr. Bakey made a presentation, and I'll try just to summarize it briefly, but the city's strategy over the last, say, 10 to 15 years has been not just to look at big companies locating here, although we would certainly welcome and have welcomed large companies here. But, if you look at the Fortune 500 companies over the last 5 years, those are the companies that have been shedding jobs, not adding jobs. So we have had a dual strategy, I guess, as opposed to pursuing companies to locate here is also a strategy to kind of grow your own. And we think we certainly have opportunity here to do that. We have, in the economy these days, the attractiveness of cities is attractive to young people. Those are the people starting companies. We think we have many things to offer the millennial generation, and that includes having, higher education institutions here. UMass Lowell and Middlesex Community College are a tremendous advantage to us. A lot of places look to create college towns, and we have that kind of already in place. We have transportation options, we have different housing options, we have a vibrant art scene, we have sports, all of which contribute to make this an attractive place to do business. We think we have on our end municipal governance that welcomes people of all kinds. And so Mr. Bakey spent some time outlining that strategy and then proceeded to tell us some of the results that we've seen over the last 5 years. And these have been reported in the Sun and other media. Try not to belabor them, but the story is a good one. We have the number of new businesses is up over 16% in the last 5 years. The number of actual jobs in the city is up 5%. 4% if you only look at the private sector, so it's not just, university and hospital growth, but actually for-profit business is up 4%. That compares favorably with the surrounding communities where job growth has kind of been flat. We do have, the lowest tax bill to enterprises north of Boston. That was confirmed in a Boston Globe study. We have redeveloped over 90% of our mill space. We've added 1,600 new housing units just since the year 2000, which is important because as we try and fill the downtown with vibrant activity, businesses need customers. And so Market rate housing units are part of the strategy, and we've had some success with that too. We certainly have our challenges, in this recovering economy. Absorption rates for commercial office space has been slow, and we certainly have experienced that here. There's an overabundance of built-out retail space nationwide, and we have some issues with major locations, retail vacancies in the downtown, and the DPD is working with landlords, trying to identify tenants that might be interested, especially in some of the higher-profile spaces. We heard a little bit about that. We know unemployment remains high for our residents, but, by the testimony we had here earlier tonight from the CFO of Cortron, we do have quality people living in the city. He's excited, and many other businesses are excited about the skilled labor force we offer, where unemployment tends to be higher, and that's not unique to Lowell, is for people with lower skills, lower levels of education, and that's, I think, going to be a challenge for us going forward. We're trying to do things to build the markets. I mentioned the housing units, and we're doing things that are in the government's control, like creating the two-way traffic pattern downtown, which was recommended in the spec report. So we're hopeful all of these things will contribute to increasing economic activity. Lowell certainly hasn't been immune from what's going on in the overall economy since the recession that started in 2008, but I think this data that we got reported to us tonight shows that we're holding our own as the economy recovers, and I think that needs to be our strategy going forward, that we need to capture and seize on the opportunities that are available to us. I think things that are happening at UMass Lowell and Middlesex, we get good reports about job training programs at Middlesex, and the research that is being spun off into companies at the university. We've seen it already with medical devices. It has potential in robotics, advanced materials, and all the things we're doing there. So I think I was pleased by the report. Certainly, places like Lowell need to be at the cutting edge, or if we're not always moving ahead, we're going to fall behind. But I think the report indicates we are well positioned to seize on some of the opportunities, and we've done well in a down economy. So that was pretty much a summary of the report, but there were specific projects that were discussed as well. If other members of the council want to weigh in or have questions, I'd be happy to discuss further.
Thank you. Any discussion on the report? Entertain then a motion to accept the report as report of progress. So moved by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilman Donso. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next we have the Rules Subcommittee of October 29th, 2013. Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Rules Subcommittee met briefly to consider Councilor Lowry's motion of several weeks ago regarding the policy, the current policy around the moment of silence that takes place at the beginning of most city council meetings. And the subcommittee voted unanimously to recommend that the policy be changed just a little bit so that it would, we'd maintain the status quo for the most part, but prior to the lights being darkened, the mayor would add a sentence to include all residents who have passed away during that week.
Offered as a motion, seconded
Yes.
by Councilor Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Councilor Leahy on the motion.
I just had a question I didn't get a chance to make the subcommittee meeting. Was it discussed at all on the school committee side, the mayor basically reads some names? Was that part of the discussion at all, or?
The discussion, in simplest terms, the discussion is to just keep things as they are, but to have the mayor add that sentence. And I think they were, I did have an opportunity to discuss it individually with several city councilors, not every city councilor, and most that I discussed it with favored just leaving it the way that it was, and that it was really not a problem. And so I think the spirit of the motion is that if we add that sentence, then everything will be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Lowry?
Not on this issue. Before we go any
Motion by Council Lori, seconded by Council Mendonça to suspend the rules. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. If Council Mendonça. Okay. If there's no objection, motion is by myself. Request the city manager develop and implement a plan to partially restore the tree canopy to New Hall Street with staggered bump outs on both sides of the street where feasible.
Hi, I'm from New Hall Street, and I just wanted to express my support for more trees on that street. We had a really nice canopy. There was a lot of shade, and it was cut down last year in order to put in a sidewalk. And we were promised that they were going to be replaced with something more appropriate. And they haven't been, and there's also a city ordinance that requires trees to be replaced when they're taken down. And so we thought that was further assurance that they would get replanted. So I'm just in favor of anything that would bring us some shade and some trees back.
Thank you. Very simply, we've discussed this, the manager and myself and Henry. It does need to be seconded, excuse me. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. We discussed this. I don't have the PowerPoint skills of the manager, but I did include a picture of what it used to look like 2 years ago. And this is what it looks like now. So, you know, the street was improved in the sense that the sidewalks are now walkable by elderly residents within that neighborhood, but now it's a street that I don't think anybody would want to walk down. You've completely ruined the beauty of the street. So what's been proposed is actually in the 2008 MIT Back Central study, some kind of bump out here, which would actually also act as a traffic calming measure where you would lose a few parking spots, but you would actually be able to install trees on either side so that you had the impression of the former tree canopy. An issue was raised about this losing parking spots. I don't think that we have an issue of parking supply down in Back Central so much as parking demand. And we need to look at ways really to reduce the demand, because that neighborhood is not going to be reconstructed to increase the parking supply. But this is something that was suggested by MIT, and I think it can be easily worked in so that you do restore some sense of how the street formerly looked. Councilor Lori.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know a couple of years ago, under the manager's initiative, I thought the trees were supposed to be replaced. I grew up there when they grew the original trees, and they were the deep rooting trees that broke up the sidewalks and so on. I thought they were going to be replaced with a tree that didn't root as deeply, didn't go down and grab the pipes, didn't cause the infrastructure problems. I think it's a great motion by the mayor, and I'd really like to see the trees replaced in that area.
Any further discussion? Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. When you say about the parking, so will there be some sort of parking lots created?
Well, what you would have there to be able to plant the trees as it's now been reconstructed is you would have a few parking spots on the street replaced by bump outs so that you could carry the tree without impeding the street, the sidewalk. And so you would lose a few parking spots, but there's plenty parking.
Right. I just would have to disagree with you on that. I mean, because I used to plow that neighborhood, and cutting through, I mean, it just seems like the cars are, it is always a heavy demand, and it's even more so as the kids grow up and they bring another car home. So, I mean, I like the picture and everything, but I think that we should try to find some alternative parking around there too. So, I mean, it's really heavily congested, so.
There is parking by the at Oliver Park, actually, right on New Hall Street, that no one uses at all.
Yeah. All right, but I just think it should be a part of the plan too, because I do travel up around there and, you know, people are convenient, so the further down the street, you're not gonna wanna park way up there, so. But, I like the plan, I just wanna make sure that, neighborhood people, you know, they're satisfied with the parking situation.
Council Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do think, I'm supportive of the motion. I do think there should be opportunity for input from the neighborhood, and I expect we'll get that. You know, I remember when these trees were planted, the ones that were recently taken down, they were sort of a neighborhood improvement initiative by Prince Macaroni. And they didn't really survive in a lot of places, but they did survive almost all the locations on New Hall Street, and it did provide for really attractive tree canopy. Bourne Street, the street I grew up on, was another street where most of the trees survived, but and I was really disappointed when these trees came down, but I did go look, and they really were wreaking havoc with, you know, the sidewalks, the curbing. It just really, it wasn't the right tree to plant, apparently, and so it's too bad. So to restore what was lost, I think is a good idea. You know, whether the bump out is the right answer or not, I don't know, but I think if we solicit input from the neighborhood and work on a plan, I'm fully supportive of that, because I think it really lost something to the street when those trees came down.
Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I have to agree somewhat. I guess when we do improvements like that, we should be accounting for new trees. If we're taking all the trees down, right? Doesn't that make sense to be doing it that way? With this particular street, I don't know if those bump outs are going to work. I don't know if they work in the winter time, you know, for snow plowing. You know, if they work fine, but it just seems to me that's going to be troublesome over in that area. However, in the original picture that you showed us, there were sidewalks there, weren't there?
Yeah.
And trees. So maybe we just need a different tree or something.
I think we'll do some more work on this. I think we did budget a certain amount. I think it was $10,000 we budgeted for trees to replace these trees that we're putting into the back central area. There isn't unanimity along the New Hall. In fact, I believe we did some survey work, and there was opposition to the trees.
Okay. Well, I guess two things. It would be good to have the trees on this street, but when we do this in other neighborhoods on certain streets in the future, it seems to me that we should account for the trees that are there. There should be, I mean, I'm pro-trees, like everybody is, so.
Yeah, no, and I agree so that's why we're putting other trees in that neighborhood, but the issue that we're trying to address is that there are people on New Hall that don't want trees. So.
Okay.
So we're trying to balance, because we like trees.
Right.
But.
Council Mercy and then Council Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some years ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago, we had a surge of calls from people on New Hall Street. They asked me to go down there. I looked at it. These beautiful trees were uplifting the sidewalks to such a degree that young people lived on that street as well and had children and couldn't let their children ride a tricycle on the sidewalk, could not walk a baby carriage. They had to go out into the street. So it was a matter of public safety to that degree. I called Henry and asked him to go down. Henry took a survey and looked around and said, yeah, I see what you're talking about. You know, you want this, but you want it all. I mean, I want it all too. I want trees, but the number one issue was we addressed a very serious problem. People didn't want to walk their children out in the street. They wanted a safe sidewalk. It looks beautiful, but you can't see the damage that it created to the sidewalk. Having said that, to go back there and ask a survey, do you want a tree there, knowing what they went through, they're saying no. So I'm not going to put something there that people don't want it. Maybe there are some that want it. Maybe we could put a different type of a tree, but we've done the best we could with addressing a major concern that they had. Now people want a tree. Well, let's see. We had such a thing before where people, we took down a dead tree in front of their house and they wanted another one there. That's a program that we had initiated and it happened. But I'm not going to put a tree in front of somebody's house that doesn't want one because they are scarred by the fact that it grew out of control. We thought at the time that perhaps we could cut the sidewalk portion out and put the sidewalk there. That would have killed the trees, so that would have been defeating the purpose. We don't want to create this, correct the sidewalk and have the tree die and have it fall on someone and kill them. So there were many factors here, but I want to take this opportunity to say we addressed the problem, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for it. Maybe we can improve better and have people that might want a tree again.
Council Martin and Council Laurie.
I was going to say pretty much the same thing. It was a serious problem on the sidewalks, and the trees did need to come down, and that probably is what's leading to the opposition, that people had such a bad experience over the course of a generation, probably. But if there is some, education and, there might be some convincing people, like, this isn't going to be that. So, Councilor Mercy, I said most of what I was going to say, so I'll stop.
Council Laurie.
Thank you. Oh, on the trees you were going to replace, weren't they less intrusive on the infrastructure? They didn't break the sidewalks, they don't root as deeply and go onto the pipes?
Yes, all of those, yes.
I thought so. Now, that's why I supported the motion. I thought it was a good idea. You're not going to see the same issues with the sidewalks. You're not going to see the same issues with the water pipes being grabbed. But hopefully we can find trees that would be suitable for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Elliott.
I remember even further back, I think it was Janesh Street, Viola. There are a number of streets that went through something similar where there was a complete road repavement process, and the circumstances were similar. There was, a canopy before, and then after there were no trees. I do recall at that time that same thing, there were surveys done on the streets. Some people wanted them, some people did not. And I think at that time, some residents elected to put the trees on their own private property. Is that something that we can look into before moving forward with this, bump out and staggered? I mean, I like trees. I have a lot of trees. But some people don't, and they do become a nuisance at some time. And more often than not, many of us get calls for, limbs on, dangerous limbs on their property, et cetera. So is that something that we're looking at?
We actually did offer that.
Okay.
Too.
Do we have anybody that's interested in taking those trees?
One person.
Just one person wanted the tree on that street?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Just to a few final thoughts. One is that this was a significant thing that people sought in the master plan when they were surveyed. Over 80% of the people surveyed wanted more street trees, not less. It is a public good. It is streets are the public realm, and so basing what we do entirely on a few people is not necessarily the best course of action. But I would also suggest that the traffic calming that does come from having the bump out, it does eliminate some of the issues with people having trees directly in their yard. It also it allows, I think, for a better placed tree to go in there. But I think it's something that's workable. What the people most were concerned about what residents were most concerned about with the original trees, which is not what we're discussing now, is that they couldn't pass on the sidewalks. And so that is the issue that we needed to address, that they couldn't pass, not the trees themselves. And so I think there's a way to, clearly we've solved it with the repaving work that's been done there, but I think there's a need to make more improvements to the street that were already there. And so that's why I've made the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Returning to item 17, for the wire inspector, petition by National Grid for underground conduit at 6th Street. A motion to accept and adopt the accompanying order. So moved by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilman Donza. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next by wire inspector for National Grid in Verizon, New England. Pole location at Stedman Street. Motion to accept and adopt the accompanying order. So moved by Councilor Laurie, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted.
Excuse me.
Councilor Leahy.
On that motion, through you to assistant manager. Any word from Verizon? I was up on 18th Street today, and there's 18th Ave. There's about 4 or 5 poles ready to come out, so I don't know whose they are, but all the wires are off. So if you could maybe at the next meeting just report whose poles or what the progress is on poles coming out again. Are they gonna start doing them more? Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Mercier.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking in conjunction with polls, I did call Henry Marchand about the poll on, I believe it's 512 Westford Street, but it's at the corner of Windsor Street. It's poll 222 that is at a 12-degree angle, and wires are falling off to the point where they're not putting them back on because they said that the pole really should be replaced, but it's not. So I don't know how quickly they are. I would have said something to the young woman that was here, but I don't know. I don't want to shoot the messenger, so I don't really know, didn't say anything. But do we know where we're going with this, Henry?
Yes, I've communicated that to our contact at National Grid, which is the community person. The folks here typically don't have that authority, but she's going to look at that and find out what they could do and what the situation is.
All right.
I mentioned that.
Posted on it, then, will you?
There's been some
posted,
contact.
thank
And
you.
we'll determine on the others as well.
Any further discussion? Next, we have a general petition, one claim for property damage, and entertain a motion to refer to the Law Department for report and recommendation. So moved by Councilor Mercier, second by Councilman Donza. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have a utility petition by National Grid for underground electric to 2 locations onto property at 585 Merrimack Street. Entertain a motion to refer to a public hearing on November 5th, 2013 at 7 p.m.
So moved.
So moved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, utility petition by National Grid and Verizon New England, pole location at 1 Perkins Street. Refer to a public hearing again for November 5th, 2013 at 7 p.m. So moved by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have a motion by Councilor Elliott, request the city manager provide a report regarding the use of police informants. Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Manager, I guess I'm becoming increasingly concerned with the use of police informants in light of the number of lawsuits that have been being filed with the city. So I don't know what the protocol is or what the process is. And I know one of the cases was dismissed, but many others were not. So when I see statements from state police where, the city's use of informants is not good, or there's systemic failure to supervise confidential informants, I get nervous, and especially when you see lawsuits. When the state police is saying that they're not reliable, we're not using reliable informants, I think that provides exposure to the city.
Counselor, I would just caution that these are pending lawsuits.
Okay. Well, the motion is to get a report on exactly what the status is and what we're doing to make sure that, what is the policy? What is the written policy that we are, or it's not being used, or, what is the reasoning behind what's taken place, and what can we do, I suppose, in the future to make sure that we have reliable informants and that, the state police agree with, we're working in conjunction with the city that these informants are, reliable. So that's the essence of the motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. If Councilman Dawson would take the chair, please.
Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager report on plans for City Hall renovation as site for archival research and current policy research, current public policy research and development. Second by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It should read City Hall attic renovation. I think it's an interesting space for people to go to. There have been issues with the clerk's office not having enough space for some of their documents, but when you go back in time, there are quite a few things that I think some people will be interested in finding out and researching there, but also as a space for university students in various programs, whether it be undergraduate, graduate programs, some of the interns that come and work in the manager's office, for example, or elsewhere, for them to come and do research for current public policy issues. I know there's issues of access that would need to be worked out so that it's up to the building code, but I'd be interested in a report on what that would take. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager review historic district guidelines and work with historic board to initiate wider public discussion of appropriate flexibility for an evolving and innovating city. Seconded by Councilor Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is really, in recognition of the work that the Historic Board has done, the Historic Administrator, Steve Stoll, has done in protecting and preserving our historical resources, recognizing that there is a balance to be struck. People have wanted to do some public art exhibits in the downtown, and responses have been kind of inflexible in what's actually allowed in the downtown. But I think that there's a place to have both historic preservation and new kinds of public art, whether it be temporary or permanent. But also, Mr. Bakey spoke earlier about most of the new construction that will take place in the downtown will in fact be new construction. It won't be redevelopment of older mills, and so there needs to be some openness into what is actually constructed in a new kind of architecture that speaks also to the architecture that exists in the downtown, and is certainly in keeping with it, but that isn't so rigidly adhered to that we don't have any kind of newer structures, that it's just a kind of static downtown. So this is really to have the discussion, I think, with the Historic Board, that I'm sure there are a few people that would be open to that, because I think there's a sense, because of there's a perception there of rigidity that really creates a risk-averse environment for artists and people that would like to see things happen in the downtown. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request clerk report on progress on goals and objectives and potential for making office more enterprising and partnering with historic administrators on genealogical packages, improving online presence, etc. Seconded by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is pretty straightforward. There was an RFP that was to go out for really getting caught up on the backlog, and would like to get an update on how that's going and where that work is going. But I think that there are certainly ways that the clerk's office could be more enterprising. That's why we chose Mr. Geary, and I hope to see what the plan is now that he's really gotten acclimated to the office, what the plan is for the next several years. Thank you.
Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. The fact is that this motion could have been something that the city clerk brings up at the last Tuesday in the month. There's a meeting that we meet, the special meeting with the auditor, the city manager, the city clerk. Maybe this could be some of his goals that he's working on with this particular motion.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request auditor report on progress developing procedures to track disposed or transferred fixed city assets. Seconded by Councilor Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The city auditor has done a great job over the last 6 years in working away at the number of management items that appear in the management letter. And I think in the last report, it was down to just 4 items. This was one of the items, and so I'd like to see how we're doing on that and what ways that the city council can support working away at this particular issue. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager provide overview of process for oversight of compliance with special permit conditions and develop plan for greater compliance in the future. Seconded by Councilor Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is really to look at some of the projects throughout the city that have had special conditions applied to their projects during plan review, and to look at whether or not they've actually been followed. In some cases, I know in talking with various people, they've sometimes been followed at first, and then signs get lost or whatever the special condition happened to be, and they're not now in compliance. So, if that happens enough, then the special conditions end up being meaningless anyway. So, it would be good to get a handle on what the extent of the problem is and how we might better address it.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager consider conducting staff survey in conjunction with the staffing study to obtain feedback not only about how the city might run more effectively, but also how it might continually recruit, develop, and retain a talented group of workers. Seconded by Council Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we talked about revision of the personnel ordinance, it came up with the proposal for a staffing study within that. I think that is an important thing to do regularly, and that in conjunction with that, that we actually do a survey of our own staff to get some ideas on what's working effectively, what isn't, and hopefully to add to whatever staffing study is done through a third party.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy, request auditor report on 2010 outside audit recommendation for internal audit function in the context of the next staffing study by the administration. Second by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. As it says in the context of the next staffing study, I think we ought to look at this. It was something that was considered resolved or partially resolved by the outside audit, but is not necessarily fully resolved. And so I think there are still functions there that could be met, and hopefully the auditor will be able to give us a report on that.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy, request manager provide analysis of school and municipal human resource departments and potential adoption of Massachusetts General Law 71, Section 37M, allowing for the consolidation of administrative functions within a city. Seconded by Council Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. This is to get an idea of whether or not this would work well in the city, to try and find some efficiencies, but also to ensure that that our human resources are done in a much more coordinated way, where there's there's not a different set of expectations on the school side than there is for the city side. And I think that at least in the exploration of adopting this, there might be some potential changes that are recommended, even if this weren't to be adopted. But to get a better idea of how you improve both departments, and maybe that means consolidating the two, but maybe it means making some other changes.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy, request manager prepare application to Sustainable Cities Design Academy for planning staff, professional development, and continued work on Eco District project. Seconded by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This Sustainable Cities Design Academy is run through the American Institute of Architects, and it's a program that's underwritten by private companies, so it's really at no cost to the city for a team of 4 or 5 people to work on a particular project. And I think that's that in going to the Institute for Design last week or the week before, whenever it was, I think it was enormously helpful in not just in attending the workshops that took place there, but also just in being in a different city. I think that's particularly important for a planning department to see how other cities do it, but not just to know it in a more intellectual way, but to see how it practically works, to see how people interact with the built environment. And my suggestion here is that it might be used to work on the Eco District project that the manager and I have talked quite a bit about.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy.
Request manager to develop application for Community Innovation Challenge Grant to work with state to initiate eco-district program here and provide model for other communities in the state of increased citizen involvement, interdepartmental collaboration and innovation, and government performance. Seconded by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is maybe one way to be able to get the planning resources that we need to get this idea off the ground, and to do neighborhood revitalization maybe in a more comprehensive way that pulls together all of our departments, but also resources from the state, from various state agencies, not just from the Environment and Energy Department, but also Health and Human Services has programs like Mass in Motion that try to create healthier environments, more walkable places, more access to fresh food in neighborhood convenience stores. So there are a number of different programs out there, and the proposal would really be for the city of Lowell to work with the state on how you tie in all the different grants that are out there on the state level, so that it's not a cumbersome process for not just the city here, but any city that might want to do a concentrated project that provides a model not only for other neighborhoods here in the city, but neighborhoods across the state. And so I think this might be a way to get that process started.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager conduct and map analysis of land uses on city's waterfront, rivers, canals, brooks, and identify specifically which parcels the city owned and open for public use. Seconded by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a very important thing to look at. It's the reason why our city started in the first place, and perhaps the reason why we have some different land uses along both canals and rivers and the brooks. But what people are looking for really are access to that waterfront. And that's difficult in a number of places throughout the city, even in places, in particular along the VFW highway, where you do have a lot of access, the Wren Beach and the Esplanade and that sort of thing. But that's severed really by the VFW highway from people that would walk there from the Centerville or Pawtuckettville neighborhoods. So I think really getting a handle on what opportunities are out there to provide greater access to the public, to the waterfront, because it is something that draws people to cities, and it's something that Mr. Bakey had talked about earlier, the notion of placemaking, and what brings people to cities and encourages them to stay. It's these kind of special places, and so I would certainly appreciate the report.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager report on prior plan to improve the Edith North Rogers School campus with investment in stormwater management. Seconded by Councilor Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. A few years ago, there was a loan order taken out to reconstruct part of the roof over at the Rogers School. And in a plan that was sent back to the City Council, there was some talk of doing some stormwater work in the back of the school that faces the South Common. And so this is really to get an update on where that stands and what we can do. I've talked to people, Mr. Paul Marion and Jane Calvin. They've talked about a plan to have a kind of an arboretum in the back there as well, and the South Common. So to both as like an outdoor classroom for the people, for some of the students that are now back in the Rogers School, but also as as just a way to control some of the drainage issues that that field has, and to follow through on the plan as it was initially presented.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager report on the status of the Coal Pocket Building at 246 Market Street and potential for feasibility study of a municipal renovation and reuse. Seconded by Councilor Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. This is a building right behind Market Street condos on 200 Market Street, and it's the transition between those places and the Hamilton Canal. So I think it's an important place. And going back again to what Mr. Baker had talked about in the Economic Development Subcommittee, the really important thing for a city to do is invest in its public spaces. And then what you'll see is that private investment really surrounds that, because you gather people in a way that provides the critical mass that different retail stores and other commercial enterprises need to survive. And it draws people into the housing that's being built. It's great to have buildings built, but you need people in them. And I think this is maybe one way to create a really interesting a park in the downtown that doesn't have that much park space. And so I'd appreciate a report again from the city manager.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager draft zoning change to reduce minimum parking requirements or create maximum parking requirements in applicable areas served by public transit and strong pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. Second by Councilor Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. Our zoning requires that we have at least 2 parking spaces for each housing unit. I think that can be an impediment to development. In talking with some of the people involved in the Perkins Park project just the other day, they talked about the struggle to provide more parking for that development. I think that if we're to truly be a city that's walkable, really spending all this kind of space strictly on parking isn't the best way, and that we can actually have greater economic development, greater housing development, if areas that are served by transit, areas that are more walkable too, and accessed by bicycles and that sort of thing, that people, or even public transit in terms of the LRTA, that in certain areas, I think you can deal with a lower parking requirement than what we have in place now. In some cases, I think there's actually too much parking. You have areas, some of the big department stores over in Plain Street really never get filled up, and that becomes then another issue of stormwater, which is situated right along a brook. So I think we might in some areas look at maximum parking requirements, but at the very least look at reducing the minimum parking requirements so that you do have increased development opportunities, but it's done in a smart way, where people can actually make better use of the space there.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that I think the city of Cambridge has maximum parking requirements, but there's 2 things about Cambridge that make it different from Lowell. One is it's a lot smaller geographically, so it is more of a walkable city than Lowell is. And second of all, Cambridge has a superior public transportation system to the city. And I think that Cambridge does it really to promote walking and bikes, or and that type of thing. But I'm not sure that that would work right now in Lowell.
Mayor Murphy.
I would just add that, two other goals for the city should also be to make it more walkable and to improve the public transit system, so that this kind of development is encouraged.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager examine use of parking enterprise capital funds for investment in maintaining and strengthening pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure in the downtown and neighborhood business districts. Second by Council Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. This is aimed at trying to improve that walkability of the city. I think that it's a way to manage parking demand and therefore might be an appropriate use, so that we can find resources to be able to improve the walkability and at the same time not affect the parking situation in a negative way.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager report on potential for bike station downtown and vacant storefront, both to gauge demand for public amenity and to possibly increase traffic for private investment. Seconded by Councilor Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. This is something that other cities have done. Some have just created completely new bike stations, but I wonder whether it's a possibility in some of the vacant places that we do have downtown, that temporarily we look at being able to have this kind of facility and see whether it might be something that has broader support for, and that you also, in a way, drive traffic to the vacant space, and maybe that creates some opportunity for people to actually look at that as a potential space to fill with something more productive.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request manager name bus shelter to be constructed in front of the Lowell Senior Center in honor of George B. Murphy Jr., seconded by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. This was a request that my brother Daniel had made to me, who's done stuff for the city in his own way. But my grandfather, George B. Murphy, he was a city councilor here back in the 1950s. He was a state representative in the 1940s. He was a veteran of World War II, serving in the Navy in the Pacific. And he was somebody who actually brought up a lot of motions about bus shelters and providing better public transit to the residents, increasing service in the evenings and in the weekends, and so I think that this would be a really unostentatious way of honoring his memory. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager have the law department draft wage theft ordinance to protect lower wage workers in our community. Seconded by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. I should have also said he would have been 101 years old today. But he also was, as a bus driver and a worker in the mills on New Hall Street, had very regularly argued for support of lower income workers. And this is a way, it's not in any direct response to a particular case here in the city, but really aimed at preventing any cases that have occurred throughout the country and even in this state, to put in place some protections there, so that people that are in effect robbed of their wages, whether through overtime or just not having paid the appropriate wage, that there are appropriate penalties in place that the city can implement.
Is this general, not just city government? This would be citywide?
Citywide.
All employers? Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Last motion under unanswered, non-responsive motions by Mayor Murphy. Request City Council adopt resolution in support of the Earned Pay Sick Time Act, House Bill 1739, Senate Bill 900, in order to provide minimum protections for lower-income private sector workers now more than afforded to those in city government. Second by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was a motion I brought forward a couple of months ago. Councilors needed more time and more information. I provided that information in this week's packet, in addition to the text of the both bills in the packet a few months back when I originally made the motion. I think it's an important. It's really an important thing that we support for the people that don't have access, like all of our city workers do, to paid sick time. The report shows that on average, most people wouldn't take the full 5 days, and although there would be costs in implementing it, those costs are really surpassed by the benefits, both to the employers through increased productivity, but also to the general public through increased health outcomes, and to the people themselves who have personally increased health. And so I think this is something that we ought to support, and we ought to argue for on the state level.
Any discussion? Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Through you to the city manager, do we have a sick bank pool in this city?
Mr. Manager.
We have, I believe, one union that has a sick bank. The remainder of the city does not have a sick bank.
What union has the sick bank pool?
The fire union?
1705 does not have it?
No, they do not.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Aye. Motion passes. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. We stand adjourned. Thank you.